Commonwealth of Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin stood up for decency, stood up for the little guy against a tyrannical government this week as he pardoned Scott Smith, who you know so much about. Remember, Scott Smith's daughter was sexually assaulted inside of a Loudoun County high school bathroom by a boy wearing a skirt who identified as, quote, gender fluid. The school, in its effort to cover all of this up, allowed the boy to be moved to a different school where he sexually assaulted yet another girl. Scott Smith becomes the face of the so-called extremist terrorist parents because he was arrested at a Loudoun County school board meeting. He got a little heated. He spoke up, and then he was dragged to the ground by the cops, removed from that room, and since then has been persecuted and prosecuted by the Loudoun County Commonwealth's attorney, Buddha Bibarai, who is, of course, funded by George Soros, and it was decided to destroy this man. Glenn Youngkin has alleviated him of that burden, thankfully. Here's Youngkin over the weekend talking on the Sunday shows, Fox News Sunday specifically, about pardoning Scott Smith.
Mr. Smith did what any father would do, what any parent would do, was stand up for their child. And even worse, what then happened was the perpetrator was moved to another school and sexually assaulted another young woman. This was a gross miscarriage of justice, and I was so pleased to speak with him on Friday and be able to issue a full pardon for him.
Youngkin went on to say this is just a father standing up for his daughter.
We righted a wrong. He should have never been prosecuted here. This was a dad standing up for his daughter. And just to remind everyone, his daughter had been sexually assaulted in the bathroom of a school, and no one was doing anything about it. And in fact, it took the election of a new governor, me, and my directive to our Attorney General, Jason Miyares, to investigate this, to uncover the fact that the superintendent had in fact covered it up.
Yeah, and among the people who was responsible for digging up the truth here is my next guest, Ian Pryor. He's executive director of Fight for Schools and a senior advisor to America First Legal, and he joins us now. Ian, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
This day, it feels like it's long overdue. How do you view it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. First of all, congratulations to the Smith family for really being able to get some resolution to two plus years of just hell. I mean, this has been going on really since May of 2021, but the prosecution of Scott Smith has been going on since June of 2021. And, kudos to the governor for, as you said, standing up for his constituents. It's very different than what you're seeing in New Mexico. And this isn't some, corporate individual that got pardoned or a political connection. This is just a guy that was standing up for his daughter. And quite frankly, I mean, I think most people in that situation would look at that and say he showed a lot of restraint, actually, as to what was going on, and now that you know what happened. And it's just appalling that the way that some of the individuals in the community and the Soros prosecutor, Buddha Bibarai, have just treated this man ever since.
Right, and this idea that they would go after him for a domestic disturbance or whatever stupid thing they were trying to go after him for. I mean, just look at the way that he's been punished and vilified in the national media. They used the footage of his arrest with his pants kind of coming down and dragging him out of the room as a basis to suggest that parents were out-of-control extremists nationwide. Both the media and the United States Department of Justice and the National School Board Association, they really decided to exploit this man who, again, was only standing up for his kid.
Yeah, and, we at America First Legal, we just received back a FOIA response to the Department of Justice, on that NSBA memo, on that Garland memo. And some of the things we saw in there were they were highlighting news articles to internally to back up why they were seeing an quote unquote increased threat at school boards. And right there, they've got Scott Smith highlighted. So this was really part of their pushback. And I think it was ultimately in a way to try and get Terry McAuliffe elected over Glenn Youngkin. But obviously it backfired because, the school was just so negligent in how they handled this. That the kid ended up in another school and there was another incident, which could have been prevented had they been more proactive, had they taken steps, had they done a Title IX investigation as they were supposed to. But, they didn't want this to come out because they were trying to pass this policy and they knew that would complicate things.
Right, that he would become the poster boy for the failures of a policy that would accommodate boys in the girls' room. So they're in the midst of saying, okay, yeah, well, let's put boys in the girls' room. And they know very well that they have a sexual assault that just took place in the very same circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And the fact of the matter is, look, this could have happened regardless of that, right? Bathrooms, other places in schools aren't always necessarily going to be safe. That's not the point. The point always was you intentionally covered this up, LCPS administration, because you did not want it getting out so you could pass your political policy. I mean, I think everybody should know that by now. And if they don't, I would suggest they read the special grand jury report that was released in December.
Yeah.
But only the most blind are unwilling to admit that.
Scott Smith, for his part, said that he actually had wanted this to play out in the court system because he thought at first he thought that would be the best way to spike the football and say, look, he didn't do anything wrong. But he said he figured out that the justice system is two-tiered and it wasn't going to give him a fair shake. Here's Scott Smith on 7 News. Stand by as I properly play this audio.
I really liked what I heard the document say. I think it's pretty clear and convincing to the public that what happened to me that day should have never happened. I'm glad that this is finally over, but it's really just begun. What happened to me cannot ever happen to another American again. And it was kind of a bittersweet moment to me, to accept this pardon, because, a year ago when I filed this appeal, I actually looked forward to my day in court with a jury trial. But as everything has played out over the last 2 years and watched, the justice system be questionably, two-tiered, the justice system being politicized, it just was apparent to me that unfortunately in today's America, getting a fair and free trial is next to impossible.
He would go on to say he had to accept a pardon because of the condition of our justice system. Ian Pryor, you've worked in our justice system. Do you agree?
Well, I think going to jury trial is always a risk. And, we looked at the Wade Byard trial, which took place in June. And, I thought the Commonwealth, the Attorney General's office put on a phenomenal case. And I thought the jury, they looked at it for an hour and said no, and so you never know if a jury is, going to engage in jury nullification or if they're just not going to be paying attention. Now, some juries may very well be paying attention, but it is always a risk that you have, 1-2 jurors that say, I'm not going to acquit, and then you got a hung jury, and then you got to do it all over again. So, I mean, I think it's a wise decision to really say, look, at the end of the day, taking those risks just isn't worth it when you have, as he talked about, an off-ramp.
And this is a power the governor has to issue a pardon of this type. And now Buddha Bibarai, for her part, she's, again, the Soros-funded Commonwealth's attorney for Loudoun County, who was prosecuting Mr. Smith. She said this in a statement yesterday. She said that this is, quote, a political stunt by Governor Youngkin, and it's an unprecedented and inappropriate intervention into an active legal case. He chose to interfere in the legal process, but not for justice, but for political gain. And she went on and on complaining about this. Now, in my view, Ian, is she really saying that Governor Youngkin did what the voters expected? Is that really a knock against Glenn Youngkin, that he did what voters expected from him?
Well, I mean, he did what's in his power as the governor, and I suggest that Ms. Bibarai should probably read up on that. But that statement is it's insane. It's absolutely insane that she would say that. Look, the statement she should have given was, look, we made this decision based on what was presented to us in our prosecutorial discretion. The governor has this power. He's exercised this power, and we respect it. The end. Instead, she goes on Twitter and puts out this crazy statement, and now she's just getting destroyed online for really what looks like, such a lack of compassion and bias, especially someone that claims that she's trying to, engage in criminal justice reform. Yeah, sure, criminal justice reform, unless it involves people that you don't like, that are on the other side of issues that you are, and you want to engage in political prosecutions. I guess that's where you are.
She also claims that she's going to, quote, continue to stand with victims of sexual assault to ensure cases are fully prosecuted. How does that work exactly? She was attacking the father of a girl who was sexually assaulted.
That's a great question. And, I believe it's an error in her presentation to the court that resulted in this individual not being put on the sex offender registry. So I'm not really sure how she's standing up for anyone. There's a large swath of the community here in Loudoun County that feels she's not going to stand up for us. You've got obviously these love warriors that are out there threatening to destroy people's lives, suffering no consequences whatsoever because they know, hey, it's Buddha Bibrai. She's not going to do anything, right? I mean, that is the condition of the Loudoun County Commonwealth Attorney. It's all about who she views as her political allies, and if they, happen to commit a crime or happen to come close to committing a crime, they don't have to worry about it.
Right. Lastly, on Youngkin, do you think that this is something he should have done earlier, or was it appropriate for it to take this long just to see how it was going through our court system?
Yeah, I do think that it was appropriate. I think there are two reasons for that. Scott Smith talked about, having to go. He wanted to go through the process, right? He wasn't looking for a pardon. Number one. Number two, I believe there may have been complications about, the status of the appeal and how that played out with particular legal issues. But then number two, his trial's coming up, right? So at that point, it becomes something that you really have to make a decision. His trial is coming up, and this trial had been delayed and delayed and delayed. And so, I think it was appropriate. And again, I applaud Governor Youngkin for doing the right thing here.
Yeah. Amen. I'm glad to see some of the heat taken off of the Smith family. They've been through enough. They don't need any more of this. Ian Pryor, Executive Director of Fight for Schools, Senior Advisor to America First Legal, and a great American. Thank you, Ian. Good to talk to you as always, sir.